Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hiring Goes Global webinar. We're excited to be with you today to chat through some of those barriers organizations face when looking to hire and employ globally. We're also going to touch on a few of the ways that ISO Talent has assisted organizations in breaking down these different barriers. My name is Christy Williman. I'm excited to be with all of you today. As a quick introduction, I've been in the international hiring industry for the past several years. I've worked with several companies on international growth, whether that's adding to their current international team or helping organizations that are exploring this for the very first time. So excited to be with all of you. I also have with me Tim Cottrell. Tim, I'd love for you to do a quick introduction.
Thank you, Christy. So I'm Tim Cottrell. I'm one of the co-founders at ISO Talent, and I've lived in Latin America for 23 years, built teams in 5 different countries in Latin America. Prior to that, I was a partner in a local CPA firm and built a team of great CPAs and talented accountants in Mexico. One of the first smaller firms that ever did that. And so we're really excited about talking to you about some of the barriers that you'll face and some of the opportunities that exist in global hiring.
Absolutely. Now, to go ahead and jump right in, there are several key factors to consider when organizations look to expand internationally. One of the benefits of international expansion is it actually opens you up to some of the top talent that you would have never had access to before if you just consider a domestic or US border. And we'd love to jump into some of the benefits. However, we really want to talk through some of the different considerations that you want to take before you expand internationally. And Tim, I think you've had some firsthand experience with this in the past.
So yeah, when a human resources leader, when you talk about hiring somebody in a different state, let's say that your company is based in Texas and you think about hiring somebody in California or Colorado or any other state, all of a sudden the human resource person starts trembling and they wonder, what am I opening myself up to by crossing that state border? And not just with respect to that one employee, but they may be dragging the entire company into additional regulation that they don't know anything about. So times that by 20, and you have some of the worry and some of the difficulty that an HR professional has when they start contemplating hiring people outside of the country. I mean, you hire somebody in a different state and you have income tax nexus. What am I getting myself into if we hire somebody outside of the U.S.? We hire somebody in Nicaragua or we hire somebody in Mexico. What are we getting ourselves into? So those are a lot of the questions that get asked.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we jump too far into these barriers and some of the benefits, I would think we'd be a little bit remiss not to cover one of the hottest topics we're hearing about every day. And those are the layoffs that we're seeing across the industry. The graph we have showing for you right now is looking at tech layoffs specifically, but we're actually seeing this affect more than just the tech industry. But if we look at some of the numbers and we go back to the left, you'll see the layoffs that started to happen right around April 2020 or when COVID started really affecting the market that we were in. And as we go through that, you start to see that settle until right about, specifically November, you'll see the biggest increase of layoffs in the market. And it's actually about double the amount that you saw during the COVID period. And we continue to see this trend happening even today. I mean, just this week, we heard that GitHub is announcing they're going to continue to lay off through the remainder of this year. And Disney's looking to cut a significant part of their employment population as well.
Yeah, and we just heard that this morning in the Wall Street Journal that Facebook is looking to go through another round of layoffs, and layoffs are everywhere. But the other side of that story is that those employees that are getting laid off are not lasting. They are getting laid off and they're immediately getting absorbed. In fact, in the tech recruits that the recruiting that we do, we're seeing that tech talent is on the market for maybe 18 days.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also highlighted here. The chief economist from ZipRecruiter, mirrored this statement exactly, that even though we're seeing significant layoffs across the board, they seem to be finding employment super quickly, to your point. And the employment rate actually is in a very healthy spot.
Well, that's right. 3.6% is considered full employment, or 4.5% is considered full employment. At the end of 2022, we had 3.6%. And I just checked the information at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we're still at 3.6%. So we are definitely 33 or so percent better than what is considered to be full employment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you think about the workers finding jobs fairly quickly, that leads us to believe that there's still a healthy hiring market out there.
Well, there is, and you look at this slide, and we saw this right before COVID hit, and that is that as the baby boomers start to retire, we saw that there were more jobs in the market than there were workers available to take those jobs, and that stopped for a while when we went through everything that we went through with COVID. But now that same phenomenon is back with a vengeance. You can see that as of the end of 2022, there were approximately 2 jobs available for every job seeker. So, if you think you're going to get the talent that you need for your company to flourish by going to your competition and hiring away their employees, they're probably thinking the exact same thing with respect to your company. So that's a net zero game for our clients, and companies are asking themselves, what are we going to do? How are we going to get the talent that we need?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to touch on the fact that, again, this isn't just affecting the tech industry. I think that's the loudest that we're hearing in the market today, but this is affecting different industries as well, whether it be nonprofit or CPAs. I think, Tim, remind me, what is the current unemployment rate, if you will, for CPA industry right now?
It's about 1%. I mean, look at
Mhm.
the headlines on the next slide. Um, you see a lot of headlines about there not being enough accountants, there not being enough CPAs, and it's a loud message. We're seeing it with our clients. They can't find finance talent, they can't find accountants, they can't find CPAs, and there's there the big four CPA firms are treating the medium size and the smaller CPA firms as minor league baseball team, and they're rating their talent, and they don't have enough talent to take advantage of the revenue opportunities that are in front of them. So it's a big deal.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you've got this is a situation that we see a lot with our clients. You've got the CEO who is saying, we need to ship our new products, we need to ship our new services. We have this closing window if we're headed into a recession where we've got to get the revenue in, we've got to ship. The CFO is saying we've got to cut costs because we may be heading into a recession. We can't afford the labor that we have. We need to be thinking maybe about some sort of a layoff. But at the same time, we can't even close our books because we don't have enough accountants. You've got a technology officer who's saying we need more people if you want to ship the next version of our software. We've got to be able to have the talent that we need in order to finish that software. And our chief revenue officer is saying we've got to have people to meet our sales goals. So there are a lot of mixed messages that exist inside of organizations today.
I know. And so between those mixed messages and not being able to find the talent to fill those current open positions that we're seeing, how do organizations look to fill the need, the gap there? And I think this is really where the discussion of looking potentially for international talent comes into play. So we wanted to bring you a quick example of a position here. Now, granted, this is just one example. We could have thrown up several different types, but we're looking here right now at a 15-year software engineer. And if we're looking for this individual based in the US, we're really looking at an employment cost anywhere from, around 200K based in Texas, maybe up to 300K in California. So paying a significant amount for that talent and having a difficult time finding it. But if we just start to look maybe in the Latin America countries, you can see that you can find great talent at a little bit lower of an employment cost. So we start seeing numbers range anywhere from 50K annually in Argentina to maybe 85K for someone based in Mexico. So very significant cost difference. But it is important to keep in mind that this is based on the same qualifications as someone you would find here in the States.
That's really true, Christy. I mean, I formed high producing teams in Colombia, in Costa Rica, um, in in many parts of Latin America, especially Mexico. And you have great talent, very committed to the organization, very well prepared, mostly bilingual, and they're available at these lower costs. It takes an effort by an organization to make sure that they're included every day. Sometimes it's easy if somebody's out of sight for them to be out of mind. But if you can make the sacrifice to make sure that you talk with them every day, make sure that you give them training, make sure that you give them assignments that have real content in them, you'll see great output from these teams, especially in Latin America. And I think that's why we always talk about Latin America. That really is our first choice, if possible, because they do such a great job and they're so well prepared. We find such great talent there.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot, you've mentioned a few of them, but a lot of benefits to hiring international. One of them being, a few savings on maybe the employment cost overall, but also around improved retention. And you started to touch on that just now, but I'd love for you to expand on that a bit more if you don't mind.
Yeah, so when I had my teams that we grew in Latin America, um, we had um, we had teams all over Latin America, and the only time that we would lose somebody is when they got an offer from somebody that just had to have somebody from our team, and they were willing to pay whatever price they had to. And in those cases, we just said, "Great, that's a great opportunity for you. Let's stay friends, let's stay in touch." But we probably had an annualized turnover rate of 3 to 5%. I mean,
Mhm.
almost never did people leave. They loved working there. They loved the experience that they got, and so really low turnover. And we're seeing that amongst our clients today. Even though the labor market is a lot tighter than it was when I built my teams there, still we're seeing that once our clients bring people on, they're staying. They love the opportunity of working with the discipline and the interactive process that U.S. and European clients have with their employees. When those clients take those employees in Latin America into account, and they get to participate in conversations, they just love it, and they stay for that.
Absolutely. So we've identified that there is great potential in opening our borders up and looking in different regions across the globe for top talent. But the question really comes down to, how do you employ this talent? What is the best model? What is the way that other organizations have employed talent in the past?
Yeah, so I remember in the 1980s, the 1990s, when people first started accessing talent outside the US. And typically it was the IT groups that would do it. And they would go to India and they would work with an outsourcing company, and they would hire 200, 300, 500, 1,000 developers that could help work on their project. That had a few negative aspects or connotations with it. First of all, there was very low control. You had to work with the outsourcing firm. Second of all, there was a language barrier. Third of all, the logistics of them being asleep when your US team was working, or vice versa, made it difficult. But yet, companies needed the expertise, they needed the continued development of their products, and they were willing to do it. After that, we saw, and especially during COVID, we saw people gravitate more to a contracting model where they would find talent online. They got used to working with people through Zoom, and they were bringing them on for what they thought were going to be short-term projects. turned out that they liked the people so much that they were contracting that they just continue to keep them on for the next project and the next project. Pretty soon, without even realizing it, they are not compliant. They're outside of of what the law requires and allows, especially in Latin America. They have a real penchant towards calling people employees. There's so many taxes that the governments in Latin America collect when somebody is an employee that they don't like the idea of you contracting somebody eternally with somebody that really should be classified as an employee. Well, the problem is that the next step traditionally, if you're not a contractor any longer, then the company has to form an entity in order to employ those people. And that has so many problems or difficulties that have to be looked at before you can actually have an entity that's working in Latin America successfully. Really, any country at all, but especially let's focus on Latin America. And to have an entity, you've got to file monthly tax returns. You've got to have contracts that are compliant. You're subject constantly to audits. You have value added tax. So there's a lot of things that you face when you form an entity. It's not for the faint of heart.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of organizations go and think maybe it might be easy to open an entity, but also shutting down a potential where you're not interested in staying anymore. Shutting down entities are very difficult at times and can take years to accomplish sometimes.
That's true. That's true.
Well, I'd love to kind of explore some of the different case studies that we've seen with some of our clients. And the first one I'd like to touch on is actually one that involved contractors specifically.
So, Christy, with your permission, I'd like to go through this.
Yeah.
A client of ours who found a lot of success in India. They found people that could help them, and they actually had over 100 engineers that were working for them. So much so that they decided to form their own entity. But as they continued to expand, they wanted a little bit more coverage here in a similar time zone, people that they could understand maybe a little bit better, people that had maybe a little bit more culturally had in common with them, and so they ended up hiring 8 people in Mexico, 15 in Mexico, 8 in Colombia, and they were working with them as contractors. And when we started talking to them, we found out that they were treating these people as contractors, and we started talking to them about the risks that were associated with doing that. So they didn't know the right way to handle these people. They grew so fast in India, and they just went immediately to having an entity. But as they thought about the people that they had in Mexico and Colombia and Costa Rica, they didn't really want to have 3 more entities, at least in 3 countries. And so they were just treating their people as contractors. So we were able to help them convert these contractors to our EOR solution. We hired them on behalf of this client. We put them on payroll. We got contracts with them. We ensured that that their taxes were being withheld, that the employer portion of the payroll taxes were being paid. They received statutory benefits. We helped them to pick benefits packages that they needed for their employees to retain them and to make them feel like they were a part of the overall organization. And now they're doing great.
Yeah. It's a great story, especially giving the guidance to them about their potential risk that they were opened up to and being able to solve that issue for them. We have another case study that I'd like to touch on real quick, and this one's a fun one. This is a case study where one of our clients came to us on the recruiting side and was really wanting us to help them find engineering talent in the States because they were struggling with finding some of the top talent that they needed. And we gave them the suggestion of maybe looking into Latin America to fill some of their open roles. And they were very open to the idea, but they wanted to make sure that the talent was in line with exactly what they were looking for. They didn't want to lose out on the talent side. So they weren't particular about where we found the talent, just that it matched exactly what they needed. So we started drafting up job descriptions, sourcing individuals, and we ended up finding a great talent pool for them to start interviewing. And they landed on 6 individuals across 6 different countries within Latin America to fill several open roles that they had. And from job description, sourcing, employment contracts, all the way through to the official hiring and start date, we were actually able to accomplish all of this within 5 weeks for them. So very, very quick to get them up and running with this talent and get them working with the organization. Another interesting piece about this was that across the 6 individuals, they actually saw a total for the salary around 270K annually, which is very significant cost savings as to what they would have gotten maybe one person here in the States. And in addition to that, since we did help recruit these individuals for them, and we did this all at the same time, they actually saw some cost savings around the recruitment itself. I think that came out around 8,000 per individual.
Christy, I really love that about our model, how we have a milestone or hourly model. And so if we do one recruitment, it's usually half or less of what you would pay with a contingent fee type of firm. But when you're looking for various people at the same level, that just multiplies the efficiency of our model. And I love the fact that we're an EOR company. Deal, who's probably the largest EOR company in the space, their slogan is, "You find the talent and we'll employ them for you." So they kind of separate themselves from that process. We take that part of the process head on, and we help you to find those people, and then we employ them for you.
Absolutely. Now, I'd love to kind of talk through another case study. And Tim, I'd love for you to dive into this one in particular.
Yeah, so we talked about the difficulty of finding accountants and finance people, and the difficulty that smaller CPA firms than the Big Four are having. And this is representative of several different solutions that we're working on right now for clients. But a CPA firm that just decided that they needed to look outside of the U.S. borders for their future, and they've asked us to help them, and we are helping them to find a tax manager, some audit people, some junior associates in their tax department, in their auditing area, and they are literally not being able to invoice revenue that is available to them because they don't have the people that they need in order to be able to do that. And so we're helping them to find that talent. They've taken their tax returns that they prepare every year, and they've put them into 3 buckets: easier, medium, and then more difficult. And they've made the commitment that they're going to start moving their easier tax returns into Latin America. All of this information sits on a server in the US. Their employees work off of that server, and when they go home at night, that information is subject to the protections that they have for their US, for all of their clients on a US server. And so we're helping them to find, some of their junior staff. Their wages are market wages are $9,000 a year. Some of their senior staff that they're looking for, we're talking about $40,000-$50,000 of base salary a year. And so compared to what they would pay in the US, where salaries for some of their people have doubled over the last 2 years, they feel really great about this solution, and we're having a great time helping them find them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to touch on a key term you mentioned earlier, and that was employer of record. You said that we hired these workers on behalf of these organizations under our employer of record. So I think let's explain that a bit more about what is an employer of record.
Yeah, so if you remember the previous slide that we had where we talked about outsourcing, we talked about contractors, and that came into vogue during COVID, and then the difficulty of having an entity. An EOR, employer of record, sits right in between contractor and entity. So we have the entity, we let you use that entity, you pick the people, we make them the offer, and they're actually employees of our subsidiary, our entity, but you get to control how they work, where they work, why they work. You get to control all of that. We just make sure that they're compliant. and that's all that we do. So if you have experience with a PEO, a professional employment organization, and you're used to working with them, it's very similar. The EOR is very similar to that. So we make sure that you're compliant. We make sure that your people are exactly classified before the tax authorities as they should be. And whether that's in the Philippines or in Mexico or in Colombia, we have that capability to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, what we're doing here with the employer of record is hiring these individuals under the entity that we have based in country. And hiring them on a compliant basis on our client's behalf. Okay. And so we would handle all of the payroll for the client, and we would just invoice the client specifically for the salaries and the contributions that they're owed in country. The nice part, or what's nice about an EOR, is the fact that it actually takes the liability or the employment liability and offsets that from the organization onto the employer of record or the entity based there in country, and allows for you to still have a compliant full-time worker without having direct ties to the country at that point in time.
Exactly, exactly. So all of these things that you would have to do yourself if you had a subsidiary, depositing and filing taxes, processing, funding payroll, that's all the stuff that we do. So it's a great solution.
Absolutely. Now, we do have, and what supports our employer of record services is our ISO Connect platform. It's a nice platform that houses all of the relationship and data associated with the workers that we have hired up on behalf of our organizations that we work for. It's a really nice solution for those organizations that are looking to expand globally for the first time and maybe don't have the current technology to support international data. It gives the worker a place to go in and connect with support, as well as pull pay stubs, request PTO. It's there to support the managers that are managing these workers with those requests, as well as the HR and finance people processing that payroll in one central location.
Exactly. This is an amazing tool. And I know that some of our competitors have tools also that help to manage this, but man, I really like our tool. I like the way that it keeps everything in one place. It's so interactive. We have one client and they pay bonuses every single payroll period. And so they have to give us all the input on those bonuses, but they can do it right in this tool that we use to calculate the local payroll. And all of our pay stubs are available here. If you're an HR professional, everything that you need to know about how much that person was paid, why they were paid, how much they were paid, how much was withheld in local and US currency, it's all right there.
Absolutely. Now, EOR has become a very popular hiring method, and we really saw the growth of that start to happen around the time when COVID hit and the workforce and the way that we worked really started to change, or the environments that we started working in started to change. So, what makes ISO Talent different than some of the other providers out there? And realistically, we've touched on some of this today through our discussion, but it's really the white glove service that we give to not only our clients, the companies, but also the workers themselves. We are there to support organizations for the full life cycle of the worker, whether that's recruiting them for you, putting in compliant contracts, all the way through compliant questions around having that employee specifically, should there something come up with the employee relationship, and even through termination. We're there to support our compliance from the beginning to the end.
That's exactly right. I love the point that we have on this slide about a carefully crafted employee experience. We really want to make sure that these employees feel like they're a part of your team. We want them to feel like they're not being outsourced, but they are part in every way possible of your team. Yes, legally they're our employee, but you, as our client, supervise them. If you need to have a difficult conversation with one of these employees, that's up to you to do. You don't need our intervention. If you decide to fire that employee, yes, you do need to have us involved, because that's an important part of, has a big compliance component with it. And so These are your employees. We help you to help them have an excellent experience.
Fantastic. Well, we would love to chat with anyone that would like a global advisory complimentary discussion. I'm here to chat with anyone. You can reach me directly through the QR code that we have up today, as well as the link we're scrolling at the bottom of this screen. But we do want to answer any questions that we have from the audience at this point.
I see a question up here. If I can start off, Christy, it says, where did it go? So the people are working directly for ISO talent and the company, how are they involved? Yes, so they are, as I just described, they are working they are an official employee with respect to, let's use Mexico as an example. With respect to Mexico, they are ISO Talent's Mexican subsidiaries employee. But for all intents and purposes, they are our client's employee, and you interact with them directly. You talk to them, you involve them in projects, you ask them to work overtime, you ask them to work weekends. Our tool lets you know when their holidays are, so you can take that into account, but they are your employees.
Excellent. Says, how does personnel management work? Who is the supervisor? It's a great question. So our clients, the company, the manager, the HR talent, this is your worker. So you get to tell them what to do on a day-to-day basis. They can represent your organization to the outside world. You can direct them for performance improvement. We're always here to give you guidance on how best to handle those situations in that specific jurisdiction if you would like. So it's your worker all the way up until a potential termination, where we would come in and let you know how we can compliantly terminate any worker that might need that situation.
Exactly. In Latin America, something that we've seen is some people have said to us, I really want to stay in the company where I'm at, but the only way that I can get a raise is to quit and go to another company. And that's something that we've seen with the Latin American employees that we have helped our clients to employ. And just by preemptively putting on your calendar that after they've been with you for 11 months, you should probably reach out and have a conversation with them about compensation and offer them a raise and offer them feedback as an employee. One of the questions, I guess why I'm saying this is one of the questions is, how does the supervisory role of your client work vis-a-vis the employees? And so they are your employees. I'm going to repeat that again. They're your employees. You get to talk to them. You get to, tell them that there's a problem. You get to give them an attaboy when something, or an attagirl when something's going great. I don't know if I want to tell this story, but just there is so much great feedback that happens when you treat your employees correctly. We've seen employees just get so excited when they get a T-shirt that has the company's name on it, or a water bottle that has the name of the company on it, and the ability to get them that swag so that they can represent your company is just very powerful. And so it's really a great structure that has a lot of great benefits associated with it.
Which we can help with. We can help distribute swag in these countries too.
That's right.
Well,
that's right.
It's been super fun to be with you here today, Tim. And it's always an interesting conversation when we start talking about the nuances of international hiring and employing. And we'd love to continue to answer any questions that you have. You can reach the ISO Talent team, as well as myself or Tim, directly with this QR code or the link we have down at the bottom. It's been a pleasure speaking with all of you today.
Thank you so much. Please get in touch with Christy, get in touch with myself. Would love to help you. And there's a great experience after you start this process. Thank you so much.
Thank you.